No more ties in June. How are you? Welcome to episode 101 of the Clay Young Show, talking about a safe BR. Roll it, Scott. Off into hurricane season, and it's still hot, but we know during the summer months we have spikes in violent crime here and other places across the country. So let's talk about it with Chris Meyer, who is CEO of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. He didn't want to wear a tie, so I didn't want him to feel bad or left out.
It's no tie summer.
No tie summer. We'll see how that works out. What's going on, brother? How are you?
It's good to see you. It's good to see you. It's been I think a rough few weeks for Baton Rouge, obviously, with the spike in gun violence and homicides. So something that's, I know, top of mind for all of us.
It is, and I talked about a Safe BR. Safe BR is an organization here that was started earlier this year, launched earlier this year, that deals with violent crime and ways to disrupt that, but also to support the law enforcement agencies here in the parish. But for people who don't know, give me the elevator on Safe BR.
Yeah, well, you may have to tag team with me since you're part of it.
I am.
Safe BR really is a coalition of community partners, everyday citizens, organizations, businesses that have all come together working with law enforcement, working with city leaders, so that we can become the safest city in Louisiana and hopefully one of the safest cities in America. And so it's been a collection of initiatives and efforts, which I know we'll talk about, but all designed to work on the entire spectrum of what it takes to create a safe and prosperous Baton Rouge.
Talk about those pillars.
Yeah, so we really started with three pillars. The first is focused on supporting our law enforcement and making sure they have the resources they need to be effective at fighting crime, because we know that there is some violence in the streets today that absolutely has to be dealt with. But at the same time, we're also dealing with the byproduct of years of low opportunity, of a lot of disengaged teens, youth, folks that don't have the skills, are not employed. Those are all conditions that sort of create, unfortunately, fertile ground for violent crime. So the second pillar is all about resources in our community that can deal with those long-term issues. And then pillar three is all about the judicial system and how do we make sure that the system of justice is fair for all involved. But also, we've got a lot of holes right now and gaps in our judicial system that, working with judges and others, we want to all tighten up and rally around them to make sure that we can sort of speed the wheels of justice fairly.
What does that last pillar look like in reality?
Yeah, so we have not announced publicly any initiatives related to that just yet, but at our last partner meeting, some of these ideas came up around how can we begin on the front end to begin to identify, folks that have been arrested. Where are they in terms of previous offenses? How are we getting data and information to judges? How are we making that data available to the public, right? So that we can have transparency on what's actually going on. During COVID, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council did a lot of work on working on those who'd been arrested with misdemeanors. So these are not violent crimes, very low level. How did we make sure that the justice system wasn't jailing these people for months upon months just to wait for a court date? Again, when somebody's not a threat to public safety, there's no need for the taxpayers to hold that or to sort of wreck the lives that happens with that. But when we're talking about violent offenses, major felonies, that's where certainly we need more of a spotlight. And so that third pillar, hopefully, is working with our judges, is going to have some new initiatives to address that.
We are having to reimagine the way we dialogue public safety in this community, which I think is a big part of what this has done. When the mayor was here on episode 100, we talked about the need for stronger enforcement and a more accountable system, but also balancing that with investment, as you referenced, in these communities. Let's deal with the enforcement part first and drill down a little bit more on what you said. We do have a small number of bad actors who are getting out and committing crimes over and over and over again. And that same group is also retaliating against anyone who may have seen them, him or her, commit crime. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, look, I think we've kind of taken the spectrum. First and foremost, at our upcoming meeting later in June, we're going to have the police here, and the sheriff talking about the strategies they're using what they call focused deterrence. So really zeroing in on what are some of those known actors, what are they doing, and how do we make sure that they are taken off the streets. I think too, there's been huge initiatives like the Paige Rice Camera Initiative, which you spearheaded, the Law Enforcement Foundation really spearheaded to make sure that we've got witnesses now. A lot of times folks feel intimidated to come forward. And so we know the police and sheriff have identified hundreds of locations across our community to really put some of these assets. And so we want to make sure, again, we're not leaving any stone unturned when it comes to putting the right resources in our law enforcement's hands so they can nip in the bud the sort of spike we're seeing right now.
We'll talk a little bit more with Chris about the investment in law enforcement, and a lot of what he's talking about is at safebr.org. You can go there and see some of these things. And later in the show, we're going to talk with Angel Nelson, who is the CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Louisiana. She's going to join us here at the set to talk about this investment in community. It really is a coalition effort. More with Chris Meyer in just a moment. Stay right there. So we're talking with Chris Meyer about SafeBR and initiatives going on during the summer. We talked about crime and public safety, but we should talk about paying law enforcement officers more. Both the sheriff's office and the police department would love to be able to pay more to their people, and I think it would aid in them getting more people. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, look, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, whether it's our law enforcement officers, our public school teachers, you know, anybody that's sort of investing in keeping us safe and the sort of productive development of our future leaders, I think we need to pay those folks as much as we possibly can. You know, I think this is where SafeBR and a coalition of leaders, we can have discussions about that and really support the mayor, support law enforcement officials as they develop plans to sort of realize that. I know there's been a sort of small pay raise that happened recently, but that's certainly something that we've heard at SafeBR, and we're excited to dig in and sort of roll up our sleeves to be part of that effort to find ways to put more resources into law enforcement, make it more attractive to being a police officer, being a sheriff's deputy.
How realistic is it, though?
To achieve more pay?
Yeah.
I think where there's a will, there's a way. You know, I think for us, I think it probably comes through a couple of sources. I think number one, a lot of what we've been looking at and sort of assessing the needs of law enforcement has been looking for ways we can streamline, you know, sort of eliminate
between the sheriff's office and the police department.
That's right.
Because we have 7 law enforcement agencies in the parish, I believe.
I think it's more than that when you start counting the universities, the airport, constable. I mean, it's one of these things that, again, from we want the safest community in Louisiana. I think we can achieve that, but we also have to look at duplication and where are there opportunities to sort of streamline and come together. And look, I know there's different cultures at times, there's different rules in civil service, but like, again, from the average citizen out there, we want to be able to raise our families. We want to be able to go to the mall or to the grocery store and not feel threatened. And certainly for folks that, you know, feel like violent crimes happening around them, I can't imagine the fear of, you know, wanting to speak out, but being in fear of your own life or retaliation. So look, this is something we can figure out. And we do know that police pay has a lot to do with growing our class of recruits and attracting people here. So we need to be competitive.
Last year they had a hiring bonus for people coming in. Of course, you exhaust that money. I did think for the agencies doing the bonuses, it was the smartest way to use non-recurring dollars to not getting to making them a part of a raise that you could not sustain. And about 90 seconds here before we go to break and Angel comes and joins us here, BRAF being involved with this in a leadership role is a little different. Let's talk about that.
Well, look, I mean, we're the community's foundation. And I think, you know, the number one issue that I heard when I came into this job about a year ago was that people were worried about whether their kids could stay here long term, or whether they wanted to raise their families here. And crime was the number one issue. And so for us at BRAF, how could we not lean into this? And I, you know, also understand it takes a coalition to move things forward. It does take average citizens pitching in. And like you mentioned before, safebr.org. If you're sitting out there listening to this and wondering, how can I get involved? How can I be part of the solution? join, understand what's going on, contribute your time, contribute dollars if you can, but we can all be part of making this community safer, and that's what the foundation is all about.
There's been a lot of good synergy in the meetings that we've had so far among people, and crime is at the top of the list for most people. There are some talks about things for business, but it's most assuredly people saying they want to feel more safe here in the community. In 30 seconds, and again, Angel's going to join us in the next segment, why are you confident we're going to get that done?
Well, I'm confident because I've seen it grow, right? I know we've tackled as a community big challenges before, and certainly in this one, I think you've got the right people, a diverse group of people coming together that are all focused on the same goal. And again, where there's a will, there's a way. And so I believe together we're going to make this the safest community in Louisiana.
Well, it is a diverse group, and there's a lot going on. Speaking of which, oh my goodness, the CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Louisiana is going to join us here at the set. You know, Chris did politely ask Miss Nelson to take her bow tie off before she came onto the set. I'm just saying, Angel Nelson is the CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Louisiana. She's also vice chair of the Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Foundation. So, Angel, you heard our conversation.
I did.
And I'd like to jump with you first on investment, because your organization is one of the pillars of investment nationally in young people, and why we need to invest in them to hopefully get them to choose progress over this chaos we're seeing on our streets.
Yeah, you know, if we can get to them at a younger age, and we serve kids 6 to 18, but we really want to focus on that 6 to 12-year-old. So before they get to where what we're talking about, what we have to deal with, we won't. You know, our mission is to inspire and enable all young people, especially those who need us most, to reach their full potential as productive, caring, responsible citizens. But if we invest in them now, and we give them that hope and opportunity, we not only will save lives, but we'll save communities, we'll save money without, you talk about how much it costs incarcerated kids, and I mean, just all of those other things that come with it. So definitely investing in them early is important.
We had a presentation a couple of weeks ago by a gentleman who talked about the cost, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but the per young person cost is $3.3 million a year to deal with them when they're in the system.
Well, that's right. The cost per homicide was $3.3 million in lost opportunity. It's the cost of the criminal justice system, of housing the offender. It's the loss to the family. But when you multiply that by what our community's experienced over the last 4 years, it's over $1 billion of lost productivity and opportunity in our community. And that's, you know, Baton Rouge is a thriving place in many ways, but we're not big enough as a community to sort of sustain every 4 years a loss of $1 billion. So the investment just does not make sense.
You know, one of the benefits of having you here, not just your organization, but as we talk about the Inspiration Center, this facility that we're all working to see built here, we were together in Minnesota and in Atlanta, and we got to see the impact. And on the second run, Chris was with us, and we got a chance to see this facility in action. And I want to say that to preface what I'm about to say. For so often here, people languaged against these kind of investments as either boondoggles or wastes of time or they're scams. And this is a very data-backed investment. It's not pie in the sky. It's not finger in the air to see which way the wind is blowing. It's based upon an assessment of the young people in their homes. It's based upon the lack of involvement in productive activity for them. So let's talk a little bit about the Inspiration Center. You first, Angel, and then Chris.
Yeah, we're excited. First of all, to bring people together, we know we can do so much more. And you said that earlier, Chris, when I heard you talk. But the partnerships that are in place here, East Baton Rouge Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, East Baton Rouge School District, you have mental health agencies, you have the foundation. There's so many entities that are coming together to ensure that our kids have the best that they can be successful at, right? And so that is so important, because we are showing the kids that we care as a community, and that we are giving back, and in turn that they can also pay it forward and give back and stay here in the community like we talked about before. So that's important. When you talk about how much it costs, for Boys and Girls Clubs, it costs about $2,300 a year per child. And that's in $25
Wow.
a year. Yes, yes,
Wow.
to invest. So you figure it's $25 a year just to be a member, and a lot of times families can't afford that, so we scholarship them in, and that's every single day, 5 days a week, and in the summer as well. So when you talk about that ROI, and then what they can, and we want to make sure that they're on track to graduate and with a plan for the future, that's priceless.
Oh, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, one of the first things we talked about with the Inspiration Center was what's different about it. And when we went to Atlanta and we saw the At Promise centers, the fact that every child that came into that center, they built a case file around them. They
Right.
understood their needs. They understood what were the risk factors. And they proved with outcomes and data that they tracked over time that they kept kids in school. They got
Yep.
kids GEDs into jobs. They
Yep.
reduced recidivism. I mean,
Right.
it worked. And so that really showed me with my own eyes kind of the impact of this center and why we need it here in Baton Rouge.
Well, and the upside is kind of asymmetrical because the top number is about 13 million to build out the entire thing, and that immediately goes down once the structure is built.
Right.
Because Boys and Girls Clubs moves into the facility, you're going to operate the facility. It doesn't require a number as large every year for it. So the benefit long term is so much more than what you invest into it, and where it's going to be built is really the most important thing because it's right in the center of where the need is. All right, so they're telling me 30 seconds going in the break. We'll talk more about the Inspiration Center, give them an idea of where we are with it now, and then the Paige Rice Camera Initiative that is really going to have a big June. Chris and I've talked about that off camera. I guess we'll let you in on it when we come back in the next segment. More with Chris Meyer with the Baton Rouge Area Foundation and Angel Nelson, the recent CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Louisiana.
Yeah.
Stay right there. So for most of you who are familiar with the show, you know on the set we keep a picture of Devin Page Jr. and Allie Rice right behind Chris Meyer here, and we keep those pictures on the set to not only memorialize them, but also to have that as a symbol of the loss to our community. And human capital is really the highest asset you can lose, and in such a tragic way. A 3-year-old child and a young woman just about to enter her own. And the namesake of the camera initiative is Devin and Allie, the Paige Rice Camera Initiative. Later in the month of June, we are going to announce what we have done with the initiative in terms of dollars raised and number of cameras placed around East Baton Rouge Parish. The camera system is connected to both the Sheriff's Office and the City Police Department, and it allows them technology that shows what's happening. And the prime example is the, I was going to say gentleman, but the person from Georgia who was here in downtown Baton Rouge and who ended up dying from what appears to be an accidental overdose. But the entire time he was moving around downtown Baton Rouge, the cameras saw his activity. The cameras have also been essential in some shootings that have happened here in the city. So our long-term strategy, Chris, and we can just give a little bit of it here, is to completely cover East Baton Rouge Parish with these cameras connected to our law enforcement agencies, where, as Chief Paul says, they become the new witnesses.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, you know, again, from Safe BR's perspective and as a community, we want to take away every barrier we can to helping our law enforcement solve crimes, lock up those that you know have perpetrated these, so that we can create safer streets. And Paige Rice is already paying off. There's been an enormous outpouring from businesses and individuals that want to get involved, and people that are saying, "Hey, look, you know, in my own neighborhood or at my own business, I may not be able to afford it, but can I request one?"
That's
And
right.
We've created enormous leverage and giving opportunities. So it's been really successful. I can't wait for this update.
So you've had a chance to meet both Allie's family and Devin's family, and you know they are so pleased that we honor these kids in that way. But I think as you tell the story of the future of Baton Rouge, this initiative will be a huge part of that.
Absolutely. I mean, just think of how much safer the people in the communities that these cameras are in are going to feel to be able to speak up. and to say something, and for it to not be the snitch type thing,
Right.
because that's what holds a lot of people back into telling or witnessing anything. And so to be able for them to feel safe to say that they can still speak up and then see the change that comes with it, I think that's going to really, really help the community when they say, wow, it was because of me that made that call or that did that, and now this person was caught or people were caught. And I think that's going to give them more confidence to do that even more so.
You know, in our early conversations about Safe BR, I had skepticism in the beginning, not because of the focus, but because there have been a million coalitions over the years. And I was extremely candid with you about that I'm very interested, and I know you are as well, as being involved in the community and let's help. But we didn't want to be a part of something that was just about press conferences.
Yeah.
That was just about pulling people into fancy rooms for a meeting. We wanted real protein. We wanted to be able to point to something that says we're actually doing something. Yeah. The center is one thing, the camera initiative is another. What are some of the other pieces of protein that we're building for the community?
Yeah, no, and we've teased a few on the show today. I think you'll hear about announcements soon related to law enforcement pay and ways to sort of grow the number of officers we have here in our community. You'll also hear new initiatives around our criminal justice system. How can we, again, support those processes so that they're much more efficient, but also shine a spotlight on them? And we've had a lot of legislation that this fall, or this spring has gone through, will become law this fall, specifically around ankle monitoring and things of those nature. So, you know, again, it's a coalition of action. It's the community coming together and saying, we're not going to have any more excuses. What can we do to aid our law enforcement and our leaders to get things done and make this a safe community?
What's the window we have, in your opinion, to actually do something before people say, "Psh, okay, there it goes"?
Look, I think it's a window of just consistency. You know, I don't know that you ever stop, but I think if you'll join any of our partner meetings, sign up at safebr.org, there's an opportunity to see regular updates on new initiatives that are starting. You can get involved if you're so led. Get involved with the Boys and Girls Club and the Inspiration Center.
Yep.
If you can donate $10 to a Paige Rice camera, do that. If you want to be a court watch professional, somebody that will go in and help us look and shine a light on what's happening in the courts, we're going to have opportunities for that. So again, we're giving people easy on ramps to plug into making the community safer. Be part of the change. Don't be part of the cynicism.
So look, I know I'll have you back in the summer to talk about what y'all have going on, but if people want to find out what's available at Boys and Girls Clubs, where can they go to get that information?
They can go to www.bgcmetrolouisiana, all spelled out, .org.
bgcmetrolouisiana.org, safebr.org. You can learn about the 3 different ways you can engage the Paige Rice Camera Initiative. And then later this month, we have big news about that initiative in terms of dollars raised and technology placed around our parish. It's proactive. And you know what? I got to say it. It was good having y'all on the show today.
Well, thank you, Clay, for inviting us.
You look good without a tie.
Yeah.
We'll get carried away. All right. I'll see y'all next week. Have a good weekend.